All right, so we are now live. So welcome everybody to Off the Record Airtable Secrets and Lore. This is week, I think it's like week 35. We're a group of Airtable users exploring new ways to use Airtable to optimize our businesses and lives. We're open to hearing from anyone about your experience, good or bad, using Airtable to make a positive impact in the world. We attempt to promote people coming from any level to share your ideas or ask questions. We also share our experiences, tips, and practices, and offer ways to get help and get involved in the community. We meet every Wednesday from 7 p.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to join, you can just go to www.videowithben.com during that time and you can join us. So to kick things off, typically go through news at the beginning. Last week, soon we'll be saying last year. Last week we went through Kruvan's scripts and she has some news. She released the script we were talking about for sale. So that's exciting. But this week we had news. No, Rebecca, we were not live. This week, the news is Airtable is down. I know Rebecca had quite the experience with it being down.
Well, AWS was down, ended up being the ultimate thing. I think we finally figured it out in the OpenSiders Slack, but yeah, all of a sudden I couldn't upload any attachments. It would just kick them right back out. I couldn't get into whole bases. It just wouldn't load. Gray screen, no attempt to load. I got mad and walked away for a minute and let everybody know in the Slacks that they should probably step away for a minute too, to give them some, I figure lightening the load helps a little bit, but then everything comes back up and my base that holds like my list of employees and my list of plants. So you can imagine that goes everywhere, gets synced to everything. Just had a fun little circle at the top and it said it was temporarily unavailable. It was just kind of like, okay, that's not okay. I need this space. I need any changes that happened, but it looks like nothing like broke or anything like that. I just couldn't get into there and it wouldn't sync any changes. And I would assume that no changes that would have been made by forms while that was happening were saved, but I don't know that, to be
I actually saw some people had like errors when they tried to submit a form. It would like, you could click submit and then an error message would pop up that said, you might actually be able to find it, but I had lots of issues that as soon as you'd sent that message with like thumbnails on any pictures, I couldn't see any of the thumbnails on any of the pictures. And then I luckily didn't have any like bases I was using that were like bad.
Well, and it's like the base I go to click on every time I need somebody's phone number or an email or whatever. So you're just going and clicking clicking there, expecting all the things to happen and waiting and waiting and waiting and nothing happens. You can't get in there. Luckily, it's, like I said, stored everywhere else.
This is what we got a few times when trying to submit forms.
Yikes.
Yikes is one word for it.
Did you lose anything like after it came back up?
I don't think so. It's because all of the synced tables that it was synced down to were fine. So I just couldn't get back into like the master table, not even by choosing like view source record or anything. It would just open a gray screen. That's it.
I feel like whenever this happens, all I can think about is Onto Air and how Dan should just be pumping all like communication channels with his like backup solution, because that's like what everybody's worried about. They're like, I can't access my base. But yeah, let's see if we can find it.
Well, the backup won't let you access it when it's down. The backup is that you can recreate stuff.
Yeah, it's like export CSVs into a Google
Yeah.
Drive is what I had done. So one of Dan from OpenSide's products is backups.
Mhm.
For anybody watching who doesn't know who Dan is. So if you're worried about losing all of your data, you can buy Dan's solution and back it up in like Google Drive.
And it'll automatically do the backups. But when Airtable is temporarily down and you have confidence that it's going to come back up, it doesn't help you in. It helps you if Airtable does not come back up at all.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, or if there's something that actually
Then you'd
ends
have to
up breaking
recreate stuff.
things.
Yeah, you can just open your CSV in like a Google Sheet. Say you like needed something from your most recent CSV.
Oh yeah, if you wanted to go in, like you say, hey, I need to find a particular value or something like that.
Well, and at least you're not, because with this situation, I was 100% locked out. Like no way to get in there, to look at anything, to ask for anything out, to back it up at that point if I had needed to. And, you know, if there is, I couldn't imagine that this situation would have actually broken anything or changed anything under the hood simply because the problem was with the parent platform. I don't know anything about these things, so I don't know if that's the case, but just in the few things that I do know, I would imagine that it couldn't change the product in that way. But it makes me worry, you know, that the phrase house of cards was thrown around and like, I feel like that's going to continue to kind of be a problem as these kind of low code, no code tools come about, because it's all new. Nobody's established. I would mark Airtable as one of the most established of these sorts of tools, and it's only been out since 2012. So, and obviously it wasn't in a completely like usable state or not according to what we use it for.
Dan said. So this was like the house of cards. It's like everything went down.
Yeah.
But too, even just in like, you know, these situations where I've built a whole system that we rely on every day. And what if that was my daily orders base? What if that was my documents base, my XYZ base that everybody needs to get into? And it just looks really bad on the part of the Airtable champion or that person that's trying to push and build and move the company forward and things like that. I know they can't control these sorts of things, and obviously millions, if not billions of dollars were lost across the world throughout this. I saw things about Amazon employees being like having to come up with like games to play with each other to keep themselves entertained because they couldn't have their phones and they couldn't, you know, all of these things, and just everybody's shut down. So at what point does something happen that does break things on the back end, or it does keep you locked out for multiple days in a row? You
If
just
Chris
have to
were
go
here,
figure
I'm sure
something
he-
else out.
Like if Metaverse was hosted on AWS and AWS went down, like the world would crash. Crash and burn. But yeah, there's so many like Alexa. I noticed like hopefully she doesn't start talking now. Like I couldn't get her to do anything. Like, and one of my clients also had trouble with Alexa. But if things were more centralized around people versus businesses, I feel like there'd be a lot more issues. But everything's back now, so it's good. Was there anything new this week in Airtable world other than that? I know I still don't have conditional logic and automations.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I think Aaron posted what the next two table talks, so tomorrow's table talk and the one after that are gonna be. So he says he's gonna,
Ask me anything.
yeah, it's gonna be an Ask Me Anything, and then it's gonna be like a year in review next week. So nothing big.
I feel like I'm gonna be the last one to get the conditional automations because I had roasted them saying that everything is still vertical. It's like branching logic.
Yeah, I feel like they created the real estate before they decided how they wanted to use the real estate.
Yeah, definitely.
I think they probably had an idea, or maybe even, had the little, what do they call them, wireframes? They probably know what they want it to look like. Then it comes into time to put that into practice, and it's not actually feasible for the structure of.
Yeah, I wonder if they're gonna change that. Oh, Rebecca, you had something a while ago with like grayscale in your emojis.
Oh yeah, it's still there. It's a Microsoft Edge problem, apparently.
I was just, I had a client that like this evening, they wanted like their groups to have colors in them. So I put the emojis in on my side, and on their side, everything was in grayscale.
Yeah, they're probably opening it in Microsoft Edge.
It's
You
actually,
can't recreate it anywhere else.
theirs is on Chrome, but I think it's their operating system.
That's so interesting because I ran, the first thing they ask you when you troubleshoot anything like that is what browser are you using? Are you using the app? Blah, 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 blah. And I went through all of the different ones, even Firefox. And the only problem I had it on was Microsoft Edge.
You still use Edge? Or is
Yeah, I do. I downloaded the app for my own personal computer, which was the end resolution of that encounter, but I can't walk every person who's going to use Airtable through that process, and it's just not feasible.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of cool topics we could go through. The one that like has kept coming up into my mind over like the past 2 weeks. So I feel like I've heard a ton of people talking about tracking like crypto in Airtable. Now I don't do anything with crypto, so I'm like the last one to learn about it. As far as like keeping it in Airtable. Kuvan, and I feel like this relies around scripting, which is why I'm leaning on Kuvan, because I feel like somehow, I think someone said it in Built on Air, and then one of my clients wants to like do something with crypto.
I don't know anything about crypto.
Rebecca, do you own any crypto?
Not currently, but I could imagine it would be in just like tracking stocks of any kind. I mean, it is a stock essentially, or rather it's bought and sold the same way.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly
also-
what they're trying to track, but
I don't know. I mean, I do know that stuff changes so fast.
Yeah, it's in Built on Air.
it seems like you should be able to, some of those people have APIs, some of the people who make all those charts and stuff.
A crypto algorithmic trading.
Oh, is that legal? I'm sure it is. Lots of people do all of that stuff off of algorithms, but that's super cool.
The other one, which I also have no idea how to do, was one of my clients wants to set up have certain scenarios on certain stocks. He does like options trading. Have it
Yeah.
in the Airtable, or like send a record to Airtable when certain conditions are met, and have that trigger a buy, and also trigger sells based on certain conditions.
How are they triggering these other apps? Are they just
Like,
doing
it's-
API calls or API connections or webhooks or?
So it's triggered by certain conditions and whatever app that I do not remember right now.
But how are you getting the data from Airtable back to the app? to tell the app to do those things?
I
Zapier or
scripting, which is why I have
scripting? Yeah.
I have no idea. Though. I want to say automation scripts, but that's just like me throwing
I
it.
was curious.
Kuban, have you ever done anything around stocks in Airtable?
No, I have not. I mean, most of what I've seen what other people have done, that it involves contacting an API of some sort.
Yeah.
And every API is different. Every API is different. Every API is different. In some ways, they're all the same, but every API is different. And a lot of the ones where where if you want like frequent updates that as opposed to like day old data, they're pretty pricey.
Yeah, I think that would be my problem with it, is either having to write the connection or deal with importing. That's like my gripe right now with my system, is importing anything, and sorry about the background noise, and setting it up to the way that it needs to be to make the rest of the system run. I can't rely on anybody else to do it 100% right every single time. I can't even rely on myself to do it 100% right every single time. And so there's just got to be a better way.
Yeah. No, it's not something I've really looked into.
Yeah, the extent that I've seen has been updating prices. Except just an internal tool. I think I've actually shared the tool that I built for one guy on this show, but it was like allocating stocks to certain buy, or like sales to certain buys.
Didn't you do something with like tracking taxes and?
Yeah, that was that one. You wanted to
Oh,
make taxes, and so he would like, whenever he'd sell, he would allocate it to the most expensive buy. Like not following, it didn't seem like any accounting standards, like LIFO, it was called LIFO or FIFO, which is last in, first out, first in, first out. It was like most expensive, or yeah, most expensive and first out. But that's his game to play. No. I just helped him. Kevon, have you built any interfaces for any clients?
I've built one, but I can't show it off because it's for a client.
Yeah.
But basically, it was a record review where the main thing was actually what I had a script that would tag the collaborator, and then it would give you a link that says, okay, now open it up into the interface, and then they could go review their records that way. And then it had maybe like 4 different panels, so like 4 different pages where you could tab between you'd click the buttons to go from page to page, and I don't remember the exact number of fields, between like 30 and 60 fields spread across the 4 different panels, so that you could easily see the different screens. You know, the set A was like general information and had a few editable fields that triggered automations. And then screen B was like one set of information. Screen C was a different set of information.
So is it all on one record? You could just go to different views?
Yeah, so like when you're in the interface, it was kind of like, so you've got the list of records on this side, you look at this record, and then you had like 4 buttons across the top to see 4 different screens about that one particular record.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then so you can have 4 screens without endless scrolling to see, I don't know, it was like between 30 and 60 different fields.
That's cool.
So it was nice. You could jump from record to record and just look at a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
But mostly a lot of buttons, and I really wish there was some way of going from one, like the navigation, without having to create the button field in the actual base itself.
Yeah, like Those buttons that are independent of fields.
Yeah. But like if there were some kind of thing where there was just a tabbed control that was within the interface itself, then I wouldn't have to have 4 different interfaces that have, the same on the side and the same header and the same buttons, except that one thing.
I'd
It'll
be happy
happen.
to have some like permissions on interfaces personally.
Yeah.
4 buttons.
I mean, stuff is coming. Like one of the nice things is when they've said that they're going to try and find a way of sharing interfaces without sharing the underlying base. Now, this is not saying we don't know whether or not they'd have to be a paid collaborator or not, which is a possibility. They haven't said that. But even if they did that, then because you control whether or not you can edit the fields, then you'd have much better permission control without
Even
having
at
to.
level.
Even what?
Even like at a read-only level, because you could like share multiple. Right now, you can share one view with somebody or the entire base. But with interfaces, if you could even
You
just
can share entire base read only.
yeah, but say you had 10 tables, you only wanted to share 3 tables, but you want to share them all in one place. Like,
Yeah.
I always just sync them down to another table exactly, with only the data that I want to have in it. But like right now, what I'm trying to avoid is having to create one table per plant with everything that needs to go out to that plant. Ideally, I would just like to be able to look at all of the different places that data actually lives and put it into one interface and give the plant the interface.
like just
Yeah.
everything in one base.
Yeah, so, or not necessarily in one base because my record limits issues don't allow for that, but to be able to have, your daily orders and your invoice audit and your whatever, and without the ability to assign roles for permissions for people outside of the collaborators, I can't guarantee for sure that I can keep people out of the data they're not supposed to be in unless that data is not even in there. That's the only way for me to guarantee for sure based on my limited ability and understanding of the permission structure, which I think could be improved with some communication on Airtable side of, hey, here's how you should set up your base if you want this and this and this to happen. We seem to be getting a little bit more of that. There was a video today with one of the people from Airtable. It was one of those how Airtable uses Airtable videos. And I think if we can get a lot more of those style of videos, just kind of Airtable people showing cool stuff that they built, we can just naturally, without forcing it, get some of this understanding of how they intend for the product to be used without forcing it. It was redundant there, but I hope that transparency moves forward a little bit. I guess that's not really transparency, more like I wish there was better documentation that was a little more. Not everybody learns from documentation.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I'm the biggest champion of documentation you'll find, and I will totally admit that, a lot of people don't learn that way.
I can say, like, are you talking about like the API documentation, or is like a help article also considered documentation?
Anything that's not product itself is documentation.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I've probably looked at like the, I don't know what to call it, scripting, API documentation, any of that, maybe once.
Well, and so to me, that stuff all makes sense. Like, I only don't understand it because I don't understand like where I would need to use it, but just to read it from top to bottom, I get what they're trying to say. They're telling you how to interface with the product. you don't really get that in the same broken down way about things like making sure your permissions are set the way that you need them.
So part of the problem is twofold. One is you don't know what to look for in the documentation. So you don't even know, what to scan for, what section, and nobody wants to search documentation. The other part is a lot of this stuff it's a combination of things. It's not just a do this, it's a do this, and they fit together this way. And sometimes it's not just two things, sometimes it's three different things. Sometimes it's like, okay, set your search table this way, and then your filter this way, and then do this other thing. And documentation, it can't handle trying to explain all of the different combinations. So good documentation can say, okay, these are what we think are the most likely combinations that we think would be particularly useful. But again, it's really hard to figure out how to present it in a way that it gets to the people who need it and is not their annoying people who don't need it.
Yeah, they definitely don't give any best practices on sharing or use, because I feel like they just want you to have as many paid licenses as possible. So it kind of makes sense that it's not like their first marketing pitch. And Kuvan, if you have to go.
Yeah, I do have to go. That was my alarm. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, all good.
Okay. All right, bye.
Thanks, Kuvan. Shameless plug. I did a course last year with Dan on account management, and we didn't really promote it very much. So now I'm releasing it for free on my YouTube channel. And I don't know, yeah, it's on there. So if you are looking at YouTube and you want to learn about Airtable sharing permissions, I have this video and it goes through the 5 different levels of sharing. But in general, I would say like the core premise of it is if you want to have bases that you don't want everybody to see, share at the base level. Like most of my clients, they come on with me and they have like 10 collaborators and they're all in the whole workspace. But then they're like, I want to create this base with like these numbers that I'm the only one who needs to see it. And we have to move everybody and share like 10 people on 10 different bases all at once.
Yeah, and so are you saying Airtable?
Yeah.
Is it super tiny?
It's pretty wide, but it's all good. There you go. That's perfect.
And so that is, how I do things, because, I even keep my stuff that I'm working on in here and stuff like that for myself. So nobody else wants to see all of that. So we do share them down. My problem is, so say I share this base down. I can only share this base. Sorry, I can't click into that one. I can only share this base exactly as it is right now. I can't go set like a view of each table and say, this view of every table is for plant 1, send them all to plant 1 without potentially, I can use URL parameters, but I can only use that on one view share link at a time.
How many plants do you have? Like, is the number of plants the problem?
40.
40. So you'd have to have 40 different views of each table. And
right. And not only that, but 40 different bases, individual bases. So I would have 40 more things down here to have to go maintain if I want them all linked back together so that they could use the functionality to look up the context. I have to set up either automations to link all of that back together, which fails all the time. That's my biggest problem in Airtable. I know I say that all the time about lots of things, but that truly is my biggest problem in Airtable. Oh my God, is freaking failing automations. And it just goes on and on. And 99% of the time, those automations are just taking a text value from one field and pasting it into another field. I've gotten recently insufficient permissions errors. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, so that probably is on, I've gotten that recently on one or two. And it's if you have a field where there's field permissions on it that say you, like, nobody can create or delete this record or something like that, or edit this field, you need to change the field permissions to be.
No, so I bet what it is I use primary keys for everything so that when you copy paste, it does not create new records. So
Yeah,
I wonder if that's what's triggering it, but it triggers even when, like, it triggers even when it shouldn't, even when the record does live over there. And there, even when I can Control-C, Control-V, copy paste those things in, like, it's just not reliable. And
I found it's a lot more reliable because I have a lot of those for like reporting on dates. And if you can have it where instead of just copying and pasting over, it makes a little bit, it uses more steps, but if you can go find the record and then use the record ID to put, like, so say you're copying and pasting right now, go find the records that match these conditions. And
yeah,
then,
so we were talking about this earlier, and I never thought to use find records in that way. I pretty much only use it when I'm about to put a grid in an email. So I'm really gonna sit down this weekend and think about it and think about kind of the other creative ways that that's meant to be used.
so I had one example where I've been using it is I have this client, they do real estate transactions and they have this like pricing table. It's like a bonus calculator basically. So depending on where their team, like how their team members perform, they get paid like a different amount.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of, like, the amount depends on how many real estate houses or whatever they sold and they completed, like the transaction closed. So one month, one person on their team might do like 25 transactions, another month they might do like 100. That's 100's a lot, but they might do 100. So I need an automation to go figure out which like tier in this bonus calculator they fit in based on that. So each, like at the end of each month for each person, it will go take like their count field of how many transactions were closed and go find which tier they fit into and then link to that tier. That way the calculation works. Because they get like a different percent of like of a bonus depending on how many they did that month.
That's so interesting. You guys are so creative.
I like had that one was like one of the hardest ones to figure out how to do because I could have just written all of that in a formula, but it would have been like this long of a formula.
Mm-hmm. That's me. I'm the 300 line formula person.
Yeah.
But looking back at a lot of my formulas I wrote in the beginning, and while they work for all of the edge cases, they're just really badly written. Now I've learned how to use the repeat function. And so a lot of those I just need to go rewrite with repeats and little things like that. I did figure out one cool trick this week.
Let's see it.
It's going to be, it's not going to matter anymore once they give me conditional automations, but basically it's how to have an email not fire off if there's no records for that grid. So if the find records action results in no records being found, or rather actually what it's doing is saying, if there's no records for that person to begin with, don't add them to the trigger. So basically, this is where we come and let our guys know what jobs are going up for collection. So the automation that runs this, it's actually two. I did that twice. Oh my gosh. So. No, it's just not doing anything. There it goes.
I've had a lot of those errors where mine will like time out and it'll be like page not responding. Do you want to exit or wait?
Yeah, I get those a lot with importing and linked records by fields. I've noticed if I have a lot of those linked records by fields, it will, they all try to load on top of each other. I don't remember. Okay, so basically what happens is there is, oh, this is the trigger, I'm sorry. Oh. So when I come into my distribution schedule table and I create my record and I tell it which email I need to send, and then this is kind of the trigger. So as soon as I can set up this whole thing, get it ready to go, and as long as I have not changed it to notify, it won't go off. So it's not going off of creating a record or anything like that. There's no way for this to go off without me being sure that I'm ready for it to go off. So then it looks for the salespeople. That have jobs, and those jobs have past due balances on them.
Is it two automations then?
It is. So there's a kind of the one that adds the people, and then the one that actually fires off the email. And so the one that fired, well, there's lots of stuff linked to the salespeople, sorry. The one that fires off to the salespeople is actually triggered off of a lookup within this table. So yeah. Once it has loaded enough for me to do anything.
Yeah, while that's waiting to load, I'm going to share this real quick. So I guess my keyword targeting must have been off, but this one is that same exact setup as this automation. So there's two automations. One like finds records and then links them to that record. Then the other one triggers off of the lookup.
This keeps happening to me, Ben, where I don't see the ones at the level that I need to see. Like I see all of your beginner, like, which all of it's great, of course, but everything I see is like, welcome to Airtable, here's a field. I'm like, I know Ben has like insane tricks and tools in here. Show me those.
Yeah, this one is definitely one of like it's that exact use case, but it's like probably one of the more advanced videos I've done. But like if you can, it'll allow you to loop, and I actually have a different way now where it does this like on it does it with one automation and it does it at a certain time. But that I like that one more. But yeah, now the reason why now there's a lot more simpler videos is because I had these two courses. One was that account management course I was telling you about, and then the other one I recorded it's another course, but I recorded it last December, I think, when I was first starting out, so it'll look a lot younger.
Your work can feel much smoother. Monday.com work OS.
Ad for Monday.com.
Right, so I went in here.
So I recorded like a beginners for Airtable. So those are the ones going out now.
I did actually add your beginner playlist to my Slack channel of Airtable training.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's public or not. There's like a separate playlist, not the Airtable for Dummies, because I'm just now like releasing this one. Let's see, where is it? complete guide to Airtable for beginners. So if you can find this one on my YouTube channel, you can watch this, but these are the different videos in it. So I still need to release these two that go over an Airtable base, but this is like the beginner videos. It's like an hour and a half of content. But you can share your screen again and show the automation.
While trying to get this base to load, I actually had to close it. I'm gonna try to cut it down, cut some of the fields down. There's like thousands of records linked to this table, but it only wants to load half of it for some reason.
How many attachments do you have in that?
This base has none. Just lots of linked records. Well, because like if you think about it, every invoice has a salesperson, every order has a salesperson, every like that thing is re-referenced. I think I might have got it. So whenever it's connected to that spot in the schedule, then it looks up what the actual things that we are talking about are.
Yeah.
And it only looks at the ones that are set to notify right now. So you can actually keep back linked records in here. You don't have to delete the linked records out every time. And you can have kind of a historical log of when you emailed who about what. And then it takes the date of today and it pastes it into either the collections column or the job sheets column, because there's two different emails that get built out of this.
Yeah.
If it will let me open back up the automation, I will show you.
That's one thing I wish you didn't have to use a formula for, is like the today's
Yeah.
like when I wish you could just, that was like part of the trigger, was like today's date. Or like not even today's date, just like the trigger date, which would happen to be today's date.
Yeah, so to me, in filters, or I'm sorry, in conditions, or what am I talking about?
When a record matches conditions.
No, like I lost my train of thought. I don't remember. Job sheet request notification. So it's looking at the salespeople table saying when these conditions are met, find the records where the salespeople is the same as the salesperson that you found from the first condition. This was the thing that I kept kind of asking around, like, does anybody know how to use this? I don't understand the purpose of these dynamic options. I figured it out. This is what it's for.
That's also how I do that like bonus calculator thing.
Oh yeah.
That's how I use, because there's basically each record is like a range.
Mm-hmm.
It has to find where it's like plus or minus like between these two fields in the bonus calculator table. So it uses that.
Yeah. And then it just sends the email and updates the record with the date that it sent the email. And I really only need to know the last date. If I need more dates, I can go back to the actual linked record.
One thing I've been using a lot in Zapier, because they just recently added this. Find the share screen.
I saw Aaron was talking to a guy about transfers.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know how long this has been out, probably a while.
What?
But I'm pretty sure it's also in beta, because I've used it quite a few times now on different client bases, but this has like been such a lifesaver. In Integromat, you could use like, I think it's called the iterator, but this allows you to like loop through line items of anything.
I gotta get back into Zapier. I built a whole bunch of stuff in Zapier right before automations came out. And then automations came and I was like, okay, well, I can stop paying for this every month. And as I go on and get into more kind of elaborate use cases, it's just not quite
If you
there.
basis, then you'd need Zapier. Hey, this was last updated on my birthday. But yeah, if you want to automate anything between any of your bases, you would need this. Yeah, it's still in beta. The only thing that I don't like about it, and maybe there's a solution to this that I just don't know about, and I think Integrama has solved for this, but here you'll have your trigger and then you'll have looping, and then you have action steps within the loop, but you can't like close the loop and then do like single steps after. Everything after the loop happens has to like you can't have a step that's not in the loop afterwards. I don't know if that makes sense. So imagine with an Airtable, if you could like have a record trigger and then go find 100 people that match the conditions and then send an email to each one of those individually. That's kind of what looping would do. And then maybe go update the parent record that all those emails were sent. You couldn't go update the record. It's a small thing, but.
Interesting. It's interesting why they would be able to do it in Airtable, but not Zapier, being that Zapier is more established.
Yeah, so you actually can't do it in Airtable. But hypothetically, if Airtable had looping, you could.
I just sent like 600 emails the other day and updated the record at the end to say that it was done.
It triggered individually off each record.
Mm-hmm.
This would be if it triggered once and sent 600 individual emails. So say you had one record that was linked to the 600 people that you wanted to send the email to.
Oh.
And it triggered once, still sent 600 emails. That's what looping does.
Oh, to save like your automation runs, basically?
It would
I think I'm just
the one that you're looking, your notify thing, instead of having 2 automations, you could do it in one.
Oh.
Instead of update record.
I thought I just wasn't smart enough.
So if Airtable had this, you'd be able to. Airtable does not have this.
I just assumed that it was a thing and I didn't know how to do it.
No, you did it probably the most efficient that you could in Airtable.
I did start the Miro board for my actual system. It's making me 2-factor.
Are you pulling up your Miro?
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot in Miro recently as well.
Is this not? My Miro's being weird. Maybe if I open it in a browser. That's right. I can show it another time.
Well, I think I'm gonna cut it off here. It's 7:08. Unless you have anything else to share, we'll see you next week. And next week will probably be our last week until the new year. So we'll take some weeks off.
Sounds good. Have some vacay.
Sounds good. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks everybody for watching too.